Welcome back to Rugby Obsession, your one-stop shop for all things Springboks. If you're as excited about the Springboks as we are, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss any of our deep dives. And today we're tackling a question that's been on all our minds. Will EBEN ETZEBETH be back in green and gold this year?
Well, we've got a few pieces of the puzzle to look at here. We've got EBEN's own statements about his recovery. We've got updates from the Sharks medical team. And now we have some very interesting comments from Springbok coach Rassie Erasmus.
Yeah, let's unpack this. Back in December, EBEN suffered a concussion playing for the Sharks against Exeter. He's been sidelined ever since. He even had to pull out of training briefly after experiencing headaches. This is serious stuff, right?
Absolutely. And the Sharks are doing exactly what they should be doing. They're taking a cautious approach, waiting for the all clear from concussion specialists, prioritizing EBEN's long-term health over a quick return to the field.
That's great to hear. But of course, we're all itching for his return. Right. And here's where it gets interesting. EBEN himself is sounding optimistic. He's saying he could be back in action within weeks, and he's even been spotted at Sharks training, albeit in a limited capacity.
Yeah, that's a really positive sign. It suggests that he's progressing well and that those initial headaches have subsided. It's still early days, of course, but it's encouraging to see him back on the field in any capacity.
Now, Rassie Erasmus has weighed in, and you know he doesn't speak lightly. He actually met with a leading concussion expert to get the latest on recovery protocols. That in itself tells you how seriously they're taking this.
It certainly does. What struck me about Erasmus's comments was his unwavering emphasis on player safety. He made it abundantly clear that they won't rush EBEN back, that he needs to be completely symptom-free before even thinking about returning to play.
Exactly. Erasmus even said, and I quote, "EBEN must just get to that stage now where they say he is concussion-free." They're not cutting any corners here, which is reassuring. And if you're loving this in-depth analysis, make sure you're subscribed to Rugby Obsession for more deep dives like this. We've got you covered for all things Springboks.
Now, reading between the lines, I think it's fair to say that EBEN is on the right track. He's reportedly symptom-free and progressing well, but the key here is patience.
Absolutely. Rushing a player back from a concussion is simply not worth the risk.
Not at all. And it seems like both the Sharks and the Springboks are on the same page here, which is great to see.
So we're all hoping for the best. But what about the mental aspect of EBEN's recovery? It's not just about the physical symptoms, is it?
It's a crucial point and one that's often overlooked. Concussions can have a significant psychological impact. Imagine the anxiety of potentially getting another concussion, the fear of long-term effects, or even just the loss of confidence on the field. It's a lot to deal with.
Like a whole other layer of recovery, right?
Exactly. And each player's experience is unique. Some bounce back quickly, for others it takes more time. That's why it's so important for the Sharks and the Springboks to be patient and provide the necessary support throughout EBEN's recovery process, both physically and mentally.
No doubt about it. It sounds like they're doing just that, which is fantastic. And while we're on the topic of support, if you're enjoying this deep dive, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the Rugby Obsession community. We'd love to have you on board.
Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about what EBEN's potential return could mean for the Springboks lineup. Assuming he makes a full recovery, where does he fit into their plans?
Well, if he's back to his best, he's a guaranteed starter in the second row, isn't he?
Without a doubt. His experience, physicality, and leadership are invaluable to the team.
He's a world-class player, and his presence would be a huge boost for the Springboks, especially with the Rugby World Cup just around the corner. It's like adding a whole new dimension to their forward pack.
It's not just his physical presence, though. Remember, he's an incredibly skilled line-out operator and a real menace at the breakdown. He's a game changer in every sense.
Absolutely. He's the complete package. And speaking of complete packages, if you're loving this deep dive into EBEN ETZEBETH'S potential return, hit that subscribe button. We're your go-to source for all things Springboks, and we've got plenty more exciting content coming your way. But for now, let's get back to EBEN. While things are looking positive, what are some potential challenges or roadblocks he might face on his comeback trail?
Well, the biggest one, as we discussed, is ensuring he's fully recovered from the concussion, both physically and mentally. Any lingering symptoms or setbacks could delay his return.
Definitely. And even if he gets the all-clear physically, regaining match fitness and sharpness will take time. He's been out for a while now, so it's unrealistic to expect him to be back at his peak immediately.
Exactly. It's a gradual process, and it might take a few games for him to find his rhythm and get back to his best.
And on top of that, let's not forget the competition for places in the Springbok squad. There are some incredibly talented young locks coming through the ranks, so EBEN will have to prove he's still the top dog.
He's got his work cut out for him, that's for sure. But knowing EBEN, he'll relish that challenge. He's a fierce competitor, and I'm sure he'll be determined to show everyone what he's capable of.
That competitive spirit is what makes him such a force on the field, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's what drives him to be the best.
Okay, so we've talked about the challenges, but let's flip the script for a second and talk about the positives. What are some reasons to be optimistic about his comeback? What makes you think he can return to form and reclaim his spot in the Springboks lineup?
Well, first and foremost, he's young. He's only 33, which is relatively young for a lock. And he's always been incredibly dedicated to his fitness. I have no doubt that he's doing everything in his power to get back to peak physical condition.
Right. And he's got that incredible work ethic and determination. He's not one to back down from a challenge.
Exactly. And on top of that, he's got the best medical support in the world behind him. The Springboks have access to top-notch doctors, physios, and specialists who are all committed to his recovery.
So you're saying we shouldn't write him off just yet?
Not at all. If anyone can overcome this setback, it's EBEN Etzebeth. He's got the talent, the drive, and the support system to make a triumphant return.
And imagine the scenes if he does. Leading the Springboks out onto the field at the Rugby World Cup. That would be something special.
It would be a moment to remember, that's for sure. And knowing EBEN, he'd be back with a vengeance, ready to make up for lost time.
We'll certainly be watching closely and cheering him on every step of the way.
Ah!
Now, let's shift our focus a bit and talk about the bigger picture here. This injury raises an important question about longevity in rugby, particularly for players who face significant physical challenges like EBEN has.
It's a topic that deserves more attention. How much longer can a player like EBEN, who's already 33 and has had his share of injuries, realistically play at the top level?
It's a question that a lot of fans are probably asking themselves. And it's a complex one, too, because there are so many factors to consider. We've got his age, his injury history, the increasing physical demands of the sport.
And we can't forget the toll that those years of physicality take on the body. It's not just about the concussions, it's about the wear and tear, the accumulated impact of countless tackles, scrums, rucks.
It's a brutal sport, there's no denying that. But on the other hand, modern rugby players are taking better care of themselves than ever before, aren't they?
They are. The advances in training, nutrition, and recovery are remarkable. Players have access to cutting-edge technology and expert guidance, which is helping them extend their careers.
And EBEN himself has always been known for his incredible work ethic and dedication to his fitness. He's a physical specimen, and he seems determined to defy Father Time.
He's definitely got the right mindset. And let's not underestimate the power of experience. As players get older, they might lose a step or two physically, but they gain a wealth of knowledge and tactical awareness that can be invaluable to a team.
Absolutely. We've seen it time and time again, haven't we? Players like Alun Wyn-Jones and Richie McCaw played well into their late 30s and were still dominant forces in the game. They were leaders, mentors, and on-field generals.
Precisely. Their experience became their greatest asset. So while EBEN's age and injury history might be factors, they're certainly not defining ones. Ultimately, it'll come down to his desire, his physical condition, and how well he manages his body in the years to come.
And you know what? Even if he decides to hang up his boots sooner rather than later, he's already cemented his legacy as one of the greats of Springbok rugby.
He's a legend, no doubt about it. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. He's still got plenty of rugby left in him, I'm sure. And I, for one, am excited to see what the future holds for EBEN Etzebeth.
Me too. It's going to be fascinating to watch his journey unfold. But that's all the time we have for today, folks.
We've covered a lot of ground, and we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to discuss when it comes to EBEN's potential return, the Springboks' second-row contenders, and the broader conversation about player longevity in rugby.
And guess what? We'll be diving deep into all of those topics and more right here on Rugby Obsession. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode.
We release new episodes every week, packed with insights, analysis, and all the latest Springbok news.
We're your go-to source for everything rugby, so make sure you're subscribed and ready for our next deep dive.
And we'd love to hear your thoughts as well. What are your hopes and expectations for EBEN's return? Do you think he can reclaim his spot as the Springboks enforcer? Head over to the comments section and let us know.
Absolutely. We want to hear from you, the fans.
Help?
But for now, let's get back to our deep dive. We were talking about the longevity of rugby players, and this injury to EBEN has really got me thinking about the toll this sport takes on the body, especially in the second row.
It's a physically demanding position, that's for sure. You're constantly involved in the heavy lifting. The scrums, the lineouts, the collisions. It's a battle of attrition out there.
And it seems like the game is getting even more physical, isn't it? The players are bigger, stronger, faster.
It's true. The evolution of the game has led to a more intense and physically demanding style of play. And that's putting even more pressure on players' bodies, especially in positions like lock, where you're expected to be a physical force.
So how do players adapt to that? What are they doing to prolong their careers and stay healthy in such a demanding sport?
Well, one of the biggest changes has been the focus on strength and conditioning. Players are training smarter, incorporating more functional movements and injury prevention exercises into their routines.
They're treating their bodies like high-performance machines.
Right, exactly. And nutrition plays a crucial role as well. Players are following carefully tailored diets designed to fuel their training and optimize recovery.
It's all about maximizing those marginal gains, isn't it? Every little detail can make a difference.
It absolutely does. And recovery is another key area. Players are utilizing a wide range of techniques like ice baths, compression therapy, and even sleep tracking to ensure their bodies are getting the rest and rejuvenation they need.
It's a holistic approach, isn't it? It's not just about training hard, it's about taking care of your body from every angle.
That's the key to longevity in rugby, and it's something that the younger generation of players seems to be embracing. They're learning from the veterans, seeing the importance of looking after their bodies.
And hopefully that'll translate into longer and healthier careers for these athletes.
That's the goal. We want to see these players performing at their best for as long as possible while minimizing the risk of long-term injuries.
Now let's bring it back to EBEN for a moment. We've been talking about the physical challenges of rugby, but what about the mental aspect? How do players deal with the pressure, the expectation, the constant risk of injury?
It's a tough mental game, that's for sure. You're constantly putting your body on the line, knowing that any tackle, any scrum could lead to injury. And the pressure to perform at the highest level, to represent your country, to win trophies, that can be overwhelming.
It's like a constant balancing act, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pushing yourself to the limit while also trying to protect your body and your mind.
Exactly. And the mental side of the game is often overlooked. It's just as important as the physical side, if not more so.
So what kind of support do players have when it comes to mental health and well-being?
Well, there's been a growing awareness of the importance of mental health in rugby, and that's led to some positive changes. Teams are starting to provide access to psychologists, counselors, and mental health professionals.
That's encouraging to hear because it's not just about dealing with the pressure of the game, it's also about coping with the aftermath of injuries, especially concussions.
Absolutely. Concussions can have a significant impact on a player's mental well-being, as we discussed earlier. They can cause anxiety, depression, mood swings, and even sleep disturbances.
And that's why it's so crucial to have the right support system in place. Players need to feel comfortable talking about these issues, knowing that they're not alone and that help is available.
It's about creating a culture of openness and understanding within rugby, where players feel supported both physically and mentally.
And I think we're starting to see a shift in that direction, aren't we? There's more discussion about mental health, more resources available, more emphasis on the holistic well-being of the athlete.
I agree. It's a positive trend and one that needs to continue. Because at the end of the day, these players are human beings, and their health and well-being should always come first.
Well said. And speaking of putting the player first, we've got to give the Sharks and the Springboks credit for their handling of EBEN's concussion. They've taken a cautious, player-centric approach, and that's a real testament to their commitment to his long-term health.
I couldn't agree more. It's setting a positive example for other teams and for the sport as a whole.
Absolutely. Now, before we move on, I just want to remind everyone that if you're enjoying this deep dive, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're passionate about rugby, and we love sharing our insights and analysis with you.
We're your one-stop shop for all things Springbok, so make sure you're part of the rugby obsession community.
Okay, let's shift gears again and talk about the Springboks second row. We focus a lot on EBEN, but what about the other contenders for those starting spots? Who are the players vying for a place in the lineup, and how do they compare to EBEN in terms of their strengths and weaknesses?
Well, you've got some serious talent in the mix. Ludjager, R.G. Snyman, Franco Mostert. These are all world-class players in their own right.
It's a good problem to have, isn't it? So much depth and quality in the second row.
It's a testament to the strength of South African rugby, but it also makes for some fierce competition. Let's start with Ludjager. He's a mountain of a man, incredibly strong and physical. He's a dominant force in the scrum and the lineout, and he's got a real nose for the ball.
He's a bit like EBEN in that sense, isn't he? That physical presence, that ability to impose himself on the game.
There are definitely similarities. They're both enforcers in the second row, capable of making those big, impactful tackles that shift momentum. But Lud is perhaps a bit more of a set-piece specialist. He's exceptional in the line-out, a real weapon for the Springboks.
And what about R.G. Snyman? He's another player who's been making waves in recent years.
RG is a different kind of lock. He's not as physically imposing as EBEN or Lud, but he's incredibly athletic and mobile for a man of his size. He's got great hands, good footwork, and he's a real threat in open play.
He's a bit of a hybrid, isn't he? A blend of the traditional lock's physicality with the skills of a loose forward.
Exactly. He's a modern-day lock capable of making an impact in all areas of the game, and he's still relatively young, so he's got a lot of potential to develop even further.
And then there's Franco Mostert, another experienced campaigner who's always been a reliable performer for the Springboks.
Franco is Mr. Versatile. He can play lock, he can play flanker, he can even slot into the back row if needed. He's a real workhorse, always putting in the hard yards, never taking a backward step.
He's a bit of a glue guy, isn't he? The kind of player every team needs, the one who does all the dirty work without seeking the limelight.
Exactly. He might not grab the headlines, but he's a crucial cog in the Springbok machine.
So we've got Lou de Jager, the set-piece specialist, R.G. Snyman, the athletic hybrid, and Franco Mostert, the versatile workhorse. It's a fantastic mix of talent, and it's going to be fascinating to see how the Springbok coaches utilize them in the upcoming season.
Especially with EBEN potentially back in the mix as well. It's going to be a battle royale for those starting spots.
And that's what makes it so exciting. It's going to be a survival of the fittest, a test of character and skill. And you know what? I wouldn't want to be the coach making those selection decisions.
It's a tough job, but somebody's got to do it. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're still a few months away from the start of the season, and a lot can happen between now and then.
That's true. But one thing's for sure, the Springboks are in good hands when it comes to their second row options. And we'll be here every step of the way, analyzing the performances, debating the selections, and sharing our insights with you.
So if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the Rugby Obsession community. We're your go-to source for all things Springboks.
Now, before we wrap things up, let's take a step back and look at the bigger picture. We've talked about EBEN's potential return, the Springboks' second-row contenders, and the physical and mental demands of rugby. But what about the future of the sport itself?
That's a great question. Rugby is at a crossroads facing challenges and opportunities in equal measure. We're seeing a growing awareness of the risks involved, particularly around concussions, and that's leading to calls for greater player safety measures.
A delicate balance, isn't it? Trying to preserve the physicality and intensity of the game while also protecting the player's long-term health.
Absolutely, and there's no easy answer. It's going to require collaboration between players, coaches, medical professionals, and governing bodies to find the right solutions.
And it's not just about rule changes and safety protocols, is it? It's also about educating players from a young age about the importance of safe tackling techniques, concussion awareness, and looking after their bodies.
That's crucial. We need to instill a culture of safety from the grassroots level all the way up to the professional ranks.
Because at the end of the day, we want to see rugby thrive as a sport, but not at the expense of the player's well-being.
Exactly. We want to see these athletes playing at their best, expressing their talent, and inspiring future generations. But we also want to see them walk off the field healthy and able to enjoy life after rugby.
It's about finding that sweet spot, isn't it? Where the game remains competitive and entertaining, but also safe and sustainable.
It's a challenge, but it's one that we need to embrace, because the future of rugby depends on it.
Well said. It's a conversation that needs to continue, and we'll certainly be keeping a close eye on those developments here at Rugby Obsession. But for now, let's bring it back to EBEN and his potential return. We've talked about the challenges, the support system, the competition he faces. But what's your gut feeling? Do you think we'll see him back in the green and gold this year?
Honestly, it's hard to say for sure. Concussions are tricky, and every recovery is different. But if I had to put money on it, I'd say, yeah, I think we'll see him back. He's young, he's determined, and he's got that incredible Springbok spirit.
And wouldn't it be amazing to see him back on the field, leading the charge for the Springboks? Imagine that moment, running out onto the field, a crowd roaring the weight of the nation on his shoulders. It would be a storybook comeback.
It would be something special, that's for sure. And knowing EBEN, he wouldn't just be happy to be back, he'd be back with a vengeance, ready to prove that he's still one of the best locks in the world.
He's got that fire in his belly, that competitive spirit that makes him such a force to be reckoned with.
Exactly. And I think that that determination will be a key factor in his recovery. He's not the kind of player who gives up easily. He'll fight tooth and nail to get back to where he belongs.
And we'll be right there with him, cheering him on every step of the way. But for now, folks, that's all the time we have for this episode of Rugby Obsession.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from EBEN's concussion and potential return to the broader issues of player longevity and the future of rugby. It's been a fascinating discussion, and we hope you've enjoyed listening as much as we've enjoyed talking about it.
Absolutely. And if you're as passionate about rugby as we are, make sure you hit that subscribe button and join the Rugby Obsession community. We've got new episodes dropping every week, packed with insights, analysis, and all the latest Springbok news. So don't miss out.
Thanks for listening, and we'll look forward to you joining us for our next deep dive into the world of rugby.